Where do you want me?
That's good.
Okay. So my game is Two, a game for two, and it's a game that's exploring how people form partnerships and relationships inside games, and tries to ask questions about how they do it, whether it matters, and how that affects how they actually relate to each other.
So, can you tell us what they're doing?
Sure. So the game is basically broken up into. It's basically like a sort of get to the end world exploration-y type game,
Right.
but it's gated by these trials, and these trials are all poke sort of different areas about how people relate to each other, how people communicate, stuff like that. So these guys are doing. So what I've set up here are 3 of those trials, not in any particular order. I just want to play test them individually. These guys are doing the one about trust. They're slowly realizing that it's about trust and going through the motions of how do we play this.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think they're lost. You might probably need to help them. They keep jumping off the cliff.
Yeah, that's meant to happen. They'll figure it out eventually. That's part of the learning process.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting that everyone goes through the same learning process, it seems, every single person. And eventually they go, oh. Yeah. What else do you want to know?
Whatever you want to talk about, how many people work on this?
Right now it's just in concepting, so it's just me throwing together some stuff. But I'll pretty much be expanding it at the end of this week, bringing a producer on board to recruit other people to flesh out more assets and get the production schedule going, the production itself going.
And what's your goal for this game?
Huh?
What's your goal for this game?
My goal is to so what I discussed before about basically I want to explore how people come together and how people form relationships in games. And not relationships, I don't mean like, oh, boyfriend, girlfriend, I mean just any 2 people getting to know each other. And the goal of this game is to really sort of think about try to evaluate how they do it and if it works, and sort of push this idea of sort of people coming together in collaborative play in a really meaningful way, and not like. So a lot of this is a response to puzzle games, for example, that are collaborative. A lot of them have one solution, and it ends up being one person figuring out how to solve it and the other person telling the other person.
Right.
And I don't really consider that to be play. I consider that to be one person solving a puzzle and the other one just becomes an extension of that person's mind in a weird way. Right. None of these are like that. A lot of these require them both to collaborate evenly or in some sort of new dynamic way that is trying to explore deeper just a specific aspect. So as I said, this is about trust. There's another one about recognition, and another one in there, because not all of these have to be so directed, that is about sort of like that's just establishing a baseline of simple working together, which they can build off in other of these trials. So, yeah.
Are they just? Is it really hard to jump or something? Because they keep going off when they jump.
Well, I think
Or what's the trick for this level?
So in this one, it's the very simple. So as you can maybe see, I don't know if you can see on the camera. So basically, there are 3 sort of cliff faces, and they have to get to the end.
Right.
But in order to pass through the cliff, you have to follow a certain path. The idea and the premise is that they see the other person's path. So they have to communicate to the other person. So first they have to figure out that's what
why
it is.
some guy just went off a cliff.
Right, so at the beginning you see a path and you go, and then eventually you fall through and you're like, wait a minute, something more. Eventually you think about it and then you come to the realization that you see the other person's path, so it's a lot about not only trusting but communicating and sort of building up this understanding. But not only that, it's about sort of coming to a common language of how to communicate this kind of thing. And the only help they get is a grid that I've placed.
Right.
But that's more for sort of sightline reference. And So and so you'll see that in the back of one, that dude is standing on nothing and has to trust that that's actually true ground.
Right. All right. One guy did it. So it repeats itself a few times in this.
So in this one, there's this small. There's the first one, which is kind of long, and then there's a smaller one immediately after it. And I'm experimenting right now with whether to try to give rewards to people for getting there first. We'll see if that's a thing. That's sort of what I'm testing here.
Right.
As well as, of course, all the other things.